From 1997 till 2010, Labour government were in charge. Their approach for sport was a sport for all approach, which meant that they wanted to get as many people involved participating in sport on a regular basis as much as possible, regardless of what circumstance they were in, whether they were unemployed, employed, had no money or had loads of money. They just wanted everyone to get involved. So they did as much as possible to do this. They worked together with the Department of Culture, Media and Sport to make Britain exciting. They split the Sports Council that was previously in place in the 90s into the UK Sport organisation, which looked at elite world-class performance, and Sports England, which was looking at mass participation. The UK Sport, since May 1997, has invested loads of money into the World Class Performance Programme, aiming the investment towards Olympic success. So in 2000, they spent £59 million for the Sydney Olympics on their athletes. This figure rose every single Olympic cycle until 2016, where it's now 274 million designated towards the Olympic athletes. Sports England in 2002 became an agency for the government. Their aim was to open doors to community sport. They wanted as many people to take part as much as possible. They provided a performance management framework for local authorities, which they had to implement, called the Towards an Excellence Service, which was put in place in 2007. This was incorporated to primary physical education and school sport, and their targets, what they had in place as well. This initiative was passed through to national governing bodies and community sports partnerships in the hope of working together, all as organisations using joined-up thinking to then put this out across the UK. They promised to invest £265 million into sports facilities in 2009. Again, upgrading the facilities means more people are attracted to it. It means they'll take part on a regular basis more often. In 2011, Sports England became a key partner with School Games, and they gave £500 million to the Gifted and Talented framework set in place. This was also met with £100 million from UK Sport, which they invested £100 million into elite sport. Sports England became partners with Sainsbury's in 2005. They introduced the Active Kids for All programme. Again, this was a free programme to get the youth involved, including the disabled, one of the first of its kind, and try and get them to participate in sport, as figures were quite low for that. Their objective was to train teachers to put in schools to then teach everyone else how to participate in sport, and then provide funding for national governing bodies and sports clubs surrounding. There was a sports premium programme put in place by the DCMS, and that was provided with a £10 million investment from that. The programme looked at giving £150 million to primary school sport until 2020, and that was each year they were looking to do that. Because of Labour's approach, they Sport for All, they released a policy called Sporting Future for All, which identified the need to modernise sport and create wider participation and greater achievement in the elite athletes. Performance plans were set in place for national governing bodies, so they had a framework to stick to, which I previously mentioned, and that gave people a structure to go off of what they wanted from sport. New Labour's social policy agenda of developing education, community development worked into sports, as they wanted people to learn how to play the sport and get taught properly, and then use that in the community, and then brighten the UK as a whole. And this laid the groundwork for the Game Plan in 2002, which was another policy document that was introduced, which was basically just moving on from the Sporting Future for All. That was introduced and looked to modernise public services, and it looked to achieve this through joined-up thinking, meaning that every department was working towards the same objective instead of contradicting one another, and each organisation doing their own individual framework, and then just sticking to that and not listening to what other people wanted. This game plan was demanded better facilities and wanted evidence on participation instead of just made up figures that people can just read off of. They reinforced the importance for evaluation and looked at building the strengths and the weaknesses, and then punishing those for failure, whether that be through giving them less funding or shutting them down or sacking whoever's in charge, and making sure that there's better facilities for the people that want to take part. It also looked towards the elite aspect and supported long-term talent identification model, which was a structure put in place that wanted to get the youth and that recognised that they were talented at a young age, and then push them through and give them the best chance to succeed for Olympic benefits. The game plan demanded Sports England to have simpler funding streams and looked at Sports England and UK Sport to distribute the funds separately. So they wanted to see what needed funding and how to fund it and make it easier for people to access them funds instead of keeping them all locked up behind the organisation's doors, essentially. They just wanted to make sure there was enough people getting the chance to use that money that was allocated towards them. Performance indicators were set up for local authorities to stick to, again setting structure, making sure people follow to it, and then making sure the youth, which was mainly targeted, making sure they get the best chance to succeed. In 2003, the Physical Education and School Sport and Clubs Links plan was formed. The aim of this was to increase the percentage rates of school children doing 2 hours of high quality PE and sport per week to 75% by 2006. This policy put in place had a £1.5 million investment over 5 years and was invested into PE, sport and the surrounding facilities. This investment was carried out through 8 different programmes, which were the setting up of specialist sports colleges and giving people school sports coordinators who would then implement their sport programme. The Gifted and Talented programme, making sure that those who deserved it got what they needed. There was PE and school sport investigation, Step into Sport, professional development, creating school and sports links and swimming. These programmes were what was needed at the time for that money to be put into, and they've done it with good success. To carry on with the school and sports links, 450 school sports partnerships were created, and that aimed to create a link between special sports colleges who then were linked to the secondary schools who were linked to primary schools. So you had that tree that you could follow the entire way through and make sure they're all following each other's policies of what wanted to be put in place. This plan was very successful. It was extended in 2008 till 2011 with a £750 million investment. That was the plan anyway. But then in 2009 we saw the introduction of the Physical Education and School Sports for Young People, which was a replacement of this act. It still followed the same premise, but it was just modified a bit. It was aimed more at the younger generation, and it was for them to have access to 5 hours, which is more than the 2 hours they were previously after. They wanted access to 5 hours to PE and sport. They aimed to stop obesity and then provide positive activities for people to take part in. So making sure they had fun and then get them involved, not on their Xboxes and stuff like that, just get them outside. 16 to 19 year olds were pushed into working with community groups and clubs. That meant they wanted to get outside and go out with the people around them and make sure that they're in a happier environment as a whole in the community were, instead of just loitering around on the street. In 2012, we had a coalition government. In 2012, they abolished the school sports premium programme and they introduced a sporting habit. This aim was to inspire the generation of young people to take up sport as a habit for life. It focused less on the Sports for All initiative and used the Olympics in 2008 and 2012 and hopefully 2016 to inspire the youth by looking at the elite athletes and looking at their success and see how they're doing and want to emulate that. It was introduced with the idea of getting 14 to 25 year olds playing on a more often basis, which is trying to bridge that Wolfenden gap, which was referred to in an earlier video, instead of dropping out at 16 and then not focused on them. It introduced competitive sport in schools, links between schools and community clubs, making sure they were working together to get the best for the talent that they were looking after, and making sure that schools were partnered with one of these clubs. So you always had a reference point. If someone was looking for a club to go to, they could go to this one. They were working with national governing bodies to focus on youth participation and getting as many people involved as possible. And again, there was a £160 million investment in facilities for people to use, meaning obviously higher participation. The Department for Culture, Media and Sport linked this programme. Linked this programme with the Physical Education School Sports programme and invested £1 billion into it to get elite athletes to inspire the youth and boost participation rates. And after that, in 2013, following on from the £1 billion investment, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and the National Lottery Scheme, which was put in place, which is aiming at providing sports for all, That gave £543 million to UK sport. It was distributed between the World Class Performance Investment, UK Sport Programmes, Partner Investment and Goal Event Series. This investment was then filtered down into the National Governing Body's World Class Programmes and 1,300 separate athletes that needed the funding to progress in their performance. The current strategy in place is from Sport England, and it introduced Sport in Future, a new strategy for an active nation. This policy is in place from 2016 till 2021. The investment has changed and is now going through 7 different investment programmes focused on inactivity, facilities and the youth. Instead of giving it to organisations and letting them putting that money into their own separate programmes.